Bridget, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing well, and how are you, Michael?
I'm great. Thank you for asking, and thank you for taking time to sit down with me this wonderful, beautiful fall after evening. How's your weekend been going?
It's been going well so far, and I hope the same is true for you.
Yes, it is going great. Want to get started.
Mhm.
First off, for those who don't know you, would you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Bridget Deline again, and I am the fellow for South Carolina. There are actually three of us for the Southern Coalition for Social Justice, and also the regional coordinator for the Church of Our Lord Jesus Christ Social Justice, Economic, and Racial Equality Commission. I wear several hats. I am owner of Upward Educational Services and founder and CEO of Family Empowerment Program. I am a mother of two children, four beautiful granddaughters, and I'm very interactive in the community.
You are very active, very well-known community activist. Tell me a little bit about your advocacy work.
Well, I'll say probably 6 months ago, I was introduced to a wonderful project through the Southern Coalition for
Mhm,
Social Justice um, to get involved in the redistricting process.
mhm,
Um, I was very involved in the 2020 census, and I've had a lot of background, work in working like doing voter registration drives, very active in the political arena. And I also am co-chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party single parent caucus. So I've been doing this for quite some time. But I had never been involved in the redistricting process.
mhm.
And to tell you the truth, I knew what gerrymandering meant, but I never really knew to the extent of how important that redistricting is in our communities. And I was trained to it through they call it SCSJ, but Southern Coalition for Social Justice. And that's very recent. And they hired me as fellow. So I'm very involved in that right now.
Tell us a little bit what are some of the things that you're learning about the redistricting process? Redistricting has already started here in South Carolina. So give us a brief update of what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and where we are from your perspective.
Well, okay. A lot of people are familiar with gerrymandering. And our main point here is we want to eradicate gerrymandering here in South Carolina. We know that's a difficult road to go down.
Mhm.
Um, well, let's just start with what is the redistricting process? What is it about? Why is it important in our communities? And what does the term gerrymandering mean? Every 10 years, congressional district maps are redrawn based on the new census data on the population. This process is known as redistricting. It's taking place across the entire country right now. It is important for our communities to be educated to the process and to be involved in it because it determines the distribution of political power for the next decade. It also directly impacts school funding, funding for roads, and it determines how monies will be spent in so many other so many other areas
Right.
in the community. Gerrymandering is, in simple terms, is a process in which specific legislators, state, local, municipalities, they draw unfair redistricting maps. Um, and I'll say they draw unfair redistricting maps 1 year after the U.S. Census is over.
Mhm.
That part I was unaware of, with a goal in mind to choose their voters rather than have their voters choose them.
Mhm.
If legislators draw lines to benefit them politically, they choose their voters. Voters should choose their politicians,
Mhm.
not the other way around.
Mhm.
Again, I emphasize every 10 years after the census is taken, politicians responsible for updating the maps draw unfair maps that dilute the voice of specific groups of people while amplifying the political power of others. You
Mhm.
may ask yourself, how can they do this? They can do this because, first and foremost, many people are not educated
Right.
about the process. Therefore, they don't know the problem exists and do not act accordingly. I must admit, up until the early part of this year, I too was not fully educated to this process.
Right.
I knew about the term gerrymandering, but did not know in depth of how the process can be unfair to people who look like me or other disenfranchised minority groups.
Mhm.
With that said, as an advocate for the cause, I have, through the organizations I mentioned earlier, I have gathered a nice group of communities of interest together to meet specific goals to help us with this redistricting process.
Mhm. What has South Carolina? I know South Carolina has just released. Well, the House released their map last week. What is the status of that map, and what were some of the things that stuck out to you about the map that they just released?
Oh, okay, the new
Right.
map. Um, I do still see some issues of gerrymandering.
Mhm.
Communities are, uh, they continue to be split, which, of course, as you know, if a community is split between, say, for an example, we have in a community, they call it the Palmetto Palms
Mhm.
community, there's like 18 units, housing units, that are assigned to Richland County School District 2, and the remaining 118 or so units are assigned to Richland County School District 1. As you can imagine, those school buses, there's two districts going into one community. Parents are upset because they want their children to go to one school district over the other. You have situations where the map showed where South Carolina House District 74 and 76 is split. The students at C.A. Johnson High School, they will go to across the street, and they are in District 74 in their home. And then when they go to school, they're in District 76. In this case,
Wow.
that's Representative Leon Howard in 76, and then Todd Rutherford, Representative Todd Rutherford in 74. That's not good for our communities. And that's what our maps look like right
Well,
now.
once the map at your organization, once these lines have been drawn, what can we as average citizens do if we feel that these lines have in somehow been drawn with the purpose of breaking up minority communities, or like you said, just splitting up? I don't think that's fair. That like you were saying, the kids in the neighborhood, we all in the same neighborhood, grew up together, play together, but when we go to school, we go to two different schools. What can we do as citizens to combat that?
Well, first, we need to educate ourselves, because just like I didn't know, and I've been heavily involved in the community, I was unaware of how it negatively, in fact, and impacts our community. And with that said, we have to start with education.
Mhm.
Then once we educate the community, then we need to get into having our communities have a voice. We can do letter campaigns, sending letters to city council, county council, to the South Carolina House of Representatives, the Senate. Um, we can have people go out into the communities and represent, say, this is District 1, this is District 2,
Mhm.
and this street, this particular community is split. We need to have our community leaders and our residents. We need to do grassroots work to
Right.
go to these public hearings and be sure that our voices are heard. That's what we can do.
What is the organization? What training is your organization doing, or what are some of the things that your several, you're working with several organizations. What are some of the things that your organizations are doing to get the word out to communities or to educate communities?
Okay. SCSJ and South Carolina Counts specifically, they are educating. They are encouraging their fellows and the communities of interest, the leaders, to go out into the communities and talk to people. Literally go door to door, have what we call redistricting 101 workshops, provide resources, get out the help to get out the vote. Explain to people that as much as going to the polls to vote is important, the redistricting process is as important, and that it may seem like we have a long road to go. We need to have as many people out there as possible. So SC Counts is another organization that's doing a great job here in South Carolina and getting out the word. We're using social media platforms. Any way we can. We have one of our other fellows, Charles Mann, has he's written op-eds. You could put op-eds in the newspaper. We have people all over the state that's working with us. And so we're pushing. And as you know, this is a long process. It has really just begun.
Do you know in terms of updates? I know you have started a Twitter account. Tell us a little bit. What are you using the Twitter account for?
Well, first of all, information. Like as much as the information is out there, we have to keep communicating. And so we use the social media platforms to do that, because after a while, if you keep hearing redistricting, and even if you don't know what it means, you start to say, okay, what is that? People will begin to Google. They will understand the importance of it, and so it's like a flashing. You just keep going with it. So we try to get as many Twitter tweets out there as possible to make sure that people not only are educated, but they know what resources are out there. That they know when these sessions are happening, school board meetings, county council meetings, city council meetings, all of this stuff is important. So we use the Twitter account to do that.
Okay. Would you give us that Twitter handle?
Sure. It's Redistricting South Carolina Communities.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't have my phone, so I could double check on that. I don't use it often. So.
One of the organizations you mentioned is a church. Is the church engaged in educating the community on redistricting?
Absolutely. We call it short for term COOJC, Region 8, Sejeric, that's here in South Carolina. Actually, they were the ones who, this organization actually got me started in the census process.
Right.
We gained $20,000 in grants to get the word out there through the organization, their partnerships. And that pushed us further into the redistricting process, as well as our partner SC Counts. They also provided for us a $2,000 grant. So with those grants, we went right into even in the middle of the pandemic in 2020, we worked the grant. We used every method that we could to get the word out. And so they actually were the ones who initiated this process. And then, of course, that's when we went to the redistricting, and that's actually how our organization was known, was through the COOJC Sejeric organization.
Now you're very active in the church. in this day and time, we see a lot of churches choosing to um, sit out of politics. We hear, or some churches may do a voter registration drive at best. Why? What do you think the role, in your opinion? What do you
Mhm.
think the role of the church should be? Do you think the church should play a more um, upfront role in the lives of its community, of its members?
Yes. And I totally agree with you. And our apostle, James I. Clark Jr., Dr.
Mhm.
Clark, he has pushed our organization recently over the years um, to follow the biblical principles, and
Mhm.
that is social justice. If you go back to the Old Testament all the way into the New Testament, and you think about what Moses did, Moses was an advocate for the people of Israel.
Mhm.
Jesus advocated for the woman that they were going to stone.
Right.
So, I mean, you can go on and on. Joseph, he look what he did. I mean, he stored up food for 7 years.
Mhm.
I mean, the churches, unfortunately, now some churches, I'm not going to say all of them because some churches have stepped
Right.
up to the plate. They
Mhm.
have. I'm not going to crush the church, but there are many others that need to step up, particularly in the Black community.
Mhm.
We need to speak on behalf of those who are, I mean, we believe that Jesus advocated for our souls. He was an advocate. So if we believe that, then why not advocate for feeding people? And then not just feeding people, teaching people not just to eat the fish that we give them, but how to go and fish. You have
Right.
to learn how to fish so you can eat the fish. And the church, our role is not just to build people spiritually, but build people emotionally, socially, recreationally. It just goes on and on. It is our role. It is our responsibility. There is no excuse for what we're. So we have Elder Van Adams, who is our interim director for the organization, and we have social concerns, Elder Ashley Johnson. All of these people, they're pushing. And then, so our presider, we have 12 regions in the Church of Our Lord Jesus Christ. And for each region, we have a regional coordinator, and I'm the one for South Carolina. And regardless of the pandemic, we've been fighting, we've been pushing, we've been getting it done, and we're excited about it.
Mhm. What are you optimistic about being able to make a difference uh, during redistricting, or are you what does it look like? What
I'm
are
a realist. I'm a realist. So through my training with SCSJ,
Mhm.
they gave us the history behind the redistricting, the problem with gerrymandering.
Mhm.
So I'm aware that we're facing a big challenge,
Mhm.
but I'm also a very optimistic person. And I do believe we have to start from somewhere.
Mhm.
And what we don't get done this time around, if we educate enough people, and young people in particular, about this whole process, I do believe that we will continue to work towards our goals during, even after the process is over, because it just doesn't stop at, okay, well, we're finished with it and they've drawn the maps and it's clear. It doesn't stop there. It continues until the next census. So if we could keep people on board and gain funding to keep the program going, then I believe that by the time in the next 10 years, enough people will be educated. And I mean, we don't want to think down that long run that it will take that long,
Right.
but I guess I'm just an optimist personally. So
What would be your ideal? What would be the ideal outcomes for the organizations that you're working with? Are you guys pushing for? I know people will say fair maps, and other organizations are saying that they want an independent commission that draws the line and not elected officials. What is your organization pushing for in terms of reform?
Um, okay, you hit it right on the nail. That is part of what we're trying to do is get
Okay.
that independent commission.
Okay.
And that doesn't seem to be possible right now.
Hmm.
But in order to do that, we're trying to build the community base, which means if we're signed, I'm not just working with Richland County, I'm working throughout the state. So building those communities together, gathering the data, helping people to be educated on this whole process. That's part of what we're going to continue doing. We're, like I said, we're not going to stop doing that. And that is a part of it. That is our main goal, is to do what we can do in this period of time, but keep fighting for it. And that's the biggest thing right now, is to build that commission.
Okay. Bridget, if somebody wanted to reach out to you or get involved in what your organizations are doing in the community, how would they do that?
Well, first of all, we are very heavy on social media platforms. So you can go to, we have the SC Crowd Academy. There's the SC Communities of Interest through Facebook. There's the South Carolina Redistricting Communities through Twitter. You can contact us through Facebook. I'll say email us through CoolJC Region 8 SJEREC at gmail.com.
Bridget, thank you first of all for what you do in the community and the advocacy work that I've watched you do tirelessly, and thank you for keeping the community abreast of what's going on with redistricting. And last but not least, thank you for joining me this evening.
And thank you for the opportunity. I really truly appreciate it. And it's none of my doing. I always say it's God's. It's God. We give Him all the glory.
Right. Most definitely. All right, Bridget. I look forward to having you back.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. You have a good one.